Hi, very good evening to all of you. How many of you believe that India is changing for better? Almost all of you. So there's no need for me to go ahead with this lecture. How do I convince people of what they're already convinced of? But many a times we kind of overestimate short-term changes and underestimate the long-term trends. So this presentation is to give you perspective of long-term trend so that you don't underinvest in India. Please remember, whatever one can say about India, opposite is also true. We are not a homogeneous country. We are heterogeneous country. Many conflicting things coexist together. Our complexity is well known, but try to imagine this. Our smallest state has a population equivalent to Estonia. And the biggest state, UP, is as big as Brazil. So when you're running India, you're running Estonia to Brazil together. If this complexity was not good enough, the per capita GDP diversion is mind-boggling. Delhi has per capita GDP equivalent to Indonesia. Goa is as rich as Paraguay. And there are many states in India which are as poor as sub-Saharan Africa. So you are trying to run a complex country from Estonia to Brazil and Indonesia to sub-Saharan Africa. This is the complexity of managing India. As I mentioned, in India, whatever you say opposite is also true. In our country, we have people who are living like sub-Saharan Africa, people who are living like a middle-income country of Sri Lanka, and people who are having luxury of France, a rich nation. In 2004, 0.5% of India was having per capita GDP of France, about 70% like middle income country Sri Lanka, and 83% sub-Saharan Africa. We have improved for better. Today, 1% of India is as rich as France, 26% middle income like Sri Lanka, and 73% like sub-Saharan Africa. Now, if you look at our history, we have done well since independence, but others have done far, far better than us. In 1947, we were at par with Japan in per capita GDP. In 1960, we were at par with South Korea in per capita GDP. In 1980, we were at par with China in per capita GDP. Today, all those countries are way ahead of us. In fact, if you look at the data from 1960 to 2021, all of our competitors, all of our peers have outperformed us massively. Certainly, we did something which was not right. From that era of low growth, poverty, shortages, let's fast forward to today. अब सभी लोगों ने बिरबल की कहानी सुनी होगी. अपनी लाइन छोटी या बड़ी दिखाने के लिए नीचे की लाइन देखना बहुत जरूरी है. Today, if you look at global situation, it's a dirty black street out there. A noted economist, Daniel Hannan, mentioned that you can't spend your way out of recession or borrow your way out of debt. Pretty simple, commonsensical thing, but most of the political leaders of the world are not understanding this. IMF believes 1/3 of globe this year will be in recession. And if this was not sufficient, the real challenge is this. The world is addicted to debt as if it's a drug. Look at countries like Spain, UK, US, Canada. To create $1 of GDP, they need to raise $4 of debt. They are mortgaging future of their kids in order to ensure that their present is livable. In this kind of debt, fast forward to today's India, we have done far better. Between subprime crisis in 2008 and COVID crisis in 2022, there's only one major economy in the world which has deleveraged itself, which has improved its debt to GDP ratio. No other country has been able to achieve that. Our households have deleveraged. Our corporates have deleveraged. Government obviously has re-leveraged because of COVID. But as a country, we have reduced our debt to GDP ratio, which no other country has been able to do. We are doing well despite shocks. हमारी कुंडली में राहु कालम तब चालू होता है जब ऑयल के दाम $100 पे पहुंचते हैं. In 2008, when oil was 100, we were virtually on our knees. At that point of time, our economy was 1/3 of Brazil and Russian GDP put together. 2022 oil touched 100. We were in pain, but we were not on our knees because now my economy is more than the combined GDP of Brazil and Russia put together. My ability to bear higher oil prices has increased with that kind of growth. Now, what we have to try next time when oil goes to 100, we should be double the size of Brazil and Russia put together. If that happens, will we bother about Rahu Kala? I don't think so. This was the slide I prepared as part of a CII delegation when we were in US with Finance Minister, and I used to get 5 minutes before her to speak about India. So I used to tell global audience that we were 10th largest economy in 2014. Today we are 5th. IMF believes we'll become 3rd largest by 2028. Our estimate is about 2030. There are some Angrez Institute which believes it will happen by 2032. कितना पेन होता होगा उनको ये एक्सेप्ट करने के लिए that India will now become bigger than UK. तो वो 2 साल पीछे रहेंगे. But the good part is that there is consensus even among Englishmen that we'll become 3rd largest economy. Our share in global GDP has moved from 2.6% to 3.4%. By 2030, we should be somewhere around 4 to 4.5%. We are one of that rare economy in the world where our share in exports is lower than our share in global GDP. दुनिया दूसरों को टोपी पहना के आगे बढ़ती है, हमने किसी को टोपी पहनाना नहीं सीखा है. Now, hopefully India will catch the bandwagon of exports. If that happens, our growth rate will go even higher. Earlier, when the world wanted to invest, we used to get about $2. Today, we are getting about $7. And by 2030, we should be getting about $10. People are backing India with money. This is why Mr. Cook is eating vada pav. There was always a criticism about India that you have potential but no performance. Your markets are big in terms of numbers, but we don't see it in terms of volume for products. We have proven them wrong on automobile market. From 7th largest automobile market worldwide, now we are 3rd largest. एक कहावत है कि बाप करता बेटो सवायो. The son has to be bigger than the father. If you want to see in corporate world, that illustration is between Suzuki and Maruti Suzuki. Suzuki has been making automobiles decades ago. They sell all over the world. Maruti started making in the 80s. They sell mostly in India. They have some exports, but mostly in India. And today, sitting in India, they sell more automobiles than Suzuki worldwide. So Maruti Suzuki has become Sawaya than Suzuki itself. In steel, we were fourth largest manufacturer. Today, we are second largest, and compared to China, will remain second largest for long. The biggest change is in mobile phones. From 12th largest manufacturer, we have become second largest. Sometime back, I was in US, and in Grand Central Station, you have Apple Store. I went there and looked at the box. वहां पे भी अपनी तरह ही है. Box ऊपर रहता है, mobile phone lock and key में नीचे रहता है. So I looked at Made in India box, felt very happy. फिर दूसरा देखा, तीसरा देखा. The store assistant came running by saying that, can I help you? मैं बोला गुज्जू भाई हूँ. Made in India box देख के खुशी मिल रही है. देखने दे आपका क्या जाता है. Rishabh bhai, that's the proud which we get when you see Made in India box in New York. If market gossips are to be believed, iPhone 15's model will be made in India before it is made in China. I hope those gossips become true. Number of unicorns have jumped from 4 to 116. Now they can come down also, but certainly they'll remain above 100. Our share in BRICS market cap has improved from 14% to 29%. Every other country has gone down. We have gone up. Not only in BRICS, it is true even in emerging market, where our share has moved from 7 to 15. If HDFC Bank goes into that index, it will become from 15 to 16. If Korea gets upgraded from emerging market to developed market, that 16 will become 17. That's the story of India. In every single parameter, if you see, we have seen an improvement. This is the opportunity for India. Within major economies, there are only two nations which have grown relative to US in terms of size over last 2 decades. One is China, second one is India. We are now bigger as a percentage of US GDP than we were 2 decades back. Very few countries in the world can lay that claim. Now, some of you will say, but Nilesh, by then in global hunger index, India was at a very, very low level, below even Sri Lanka and Afghanistan kind of countries. So please take this global survey with a pinch of salt. As per global survey, countries like Finland, Denmark, Switzerland, Iceland, Netherlands, all the lands are happiest countries in the world. When you are happy, what do? Khayenge, piyenge, gana gaenge. But in those countries, when they are happy, they go and take antidepressant medicines. The largest consumer of antidepressant medicines are the countries which are supposedly happiest. हमें तो आज तक समझ में नहीं आया कि लोग खुश हुए तो डिप्रेशन की दवाइयां क्यों लेंगे. So please take this global service with a pinch of salt. Many a times decisions are taken first and then the results are given. India is changing and changing for better. But please remember that growth doesn't mean anything unless it is an inclusive growth. Our transition is what is this step well in Telangana, Bansila Pet. Earlier, it was dirty, no visitor, no upkeep, no maintenance. And today, if you go to Bansilal Pet Stepwell, you see many tourists thronging the place. It's live, it's active. I think this is the transition of India pre-90s and post-90s. We are moving from relationship-based economy to rule-based economy. Today, as Rishabh mentioned, India is number one cricket team in T20, in one day, in test matches. Sometimes number one, sometimes number two, sometimes number three. But from bottom up, we are necessarily in top quarter. And why did that happen? It happened because our players started becoming top players in the world, like Surya Kumar Yadav in T20, Bumrah in one day. When your player goes up, the team ranking goes up. Now look at India's cities. Some of our cities like Bangalore, Hyderabad, Delhi, Chennai, they have the highest under construction commercial space in the world. The world's largest construction activities for commercial places are happening in Indian cities. Look at from a growth point of view. 6 out of top 10 fastest growing cities of the world are in India last year. Hyderabad, Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai. I believe there are few cities in India, if they disclose what they are doing, then 10 out of 10 fastest growing cities of the world will be in India. If cities are doing well, can the team be left behind? We are in the state of Maharashtra. Today, Maharashtra's GDP is equivalent to what was India's GDP in 2005. In about 17 years, Maharashtra has reached where India was yesterday. There are 4 states, UP, Uttarakhand combined, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and Gujarat. Today, their GDP is where India was in 2000. In about 2 decades, 5 states have reached where yesterday's India was. Over next 2 decades, can this 5 states create same miracle and become today's India? I'll put my money on it. That means we are going to see 5 India only from this 5 or 6 states. Other states are not going to remain sitting idle. They'll also contribute. This is the growth story of India. Your cities are doing well. Your states are doing well. How can the team be left behind? And finally, behind cities and states are corporates. We all know how our corporates are doing. But let me tell you the story of Amul. It's a cooperative society. It's run by farmers. It does not necessarily get the best talent like a multinational company. And yet, year after year, it has remained India's largest FMCG company. The turnover last year was 61,000 crore. In their annual report for FY22, they have aimed that will become world's largest FMCG company by 2047 with about $220 billion turnover. अब पहले आता है कि बस is it possible? Is it daydreaming? लंबी फेंक रहा है क्या? But this is Amul. They are capable of doing miracle. In 1970, India was importing milk and milk products because our milk production was 16% of Europe's milk production. Thanks to Amul and other societies, we are now 150% of Europe's milk production. If Amul can move me from 16 to 150% of Europe's milk production in 5 decades, why will it not move from being largest FMCG company of India to world's largest FMCG company? And Amul is already working upon it. You all know who won the World Cup football last time, right? Argentina. Why did they won? I mean, Messi. How can you forget about him? बट मेसी भाई तो पहले भी खेलता था, तब तो वर्ल्ड कप फुटबॉल नहीं जीता, जब यंगर था, एजाइल था, फिट था. अब क्यों जीता? I think the secret lies in sponsorship. Amul was sponsor for Argentina football team. If 2 crore farmers pray for them, Messi भी जीत सकता है वर्ल्ड कप फुटबॉल. So this is in lighter vein. Similarly, if you look at Indian cricket again, the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, it was Shivaji Park Gymkhana cricket team. Gavaskar, Vengsarkar, Wadekar, Sardesai. ये लोग आते थे, खेलते थे. And many a times for Sunil Gavaskar, it was said that he was always playing conservatively because he knew कि अगर मैं out हो गया तो पूरी टीम पीछे पीछे आ जाएगी. Despite being the world's best batsman in his era, Gavaskar didn't go for win. He first wanted to draw the match, secure the match, and then go for a kill. Now we have all India cricket team. Hardik Pandya is from Baroda. Jadeja is from Jamnagar. Cheteshwar Pujara is from Rajkot. Shreyas Iyer is from Palghar. Dhoni came from Ranchi. All outside of Shivaji Park, Gymkhana. And this team today goes for win. They don't bother about drawing the match. जीतना है. कभी-कभी जीतते जीतते हार जाते, but that's a different thing. What happened in Indian cricket's mindset made India top cricket team in the world. The same thing is happening in business now. The stockbroking, that business was dominated by Gujaratis and Marwadis in the city of Mumbai. Two Kamath brothers in the city of Bangalore came and toppled everyone. Today they run India's largest broking company. If you see now in various towns, you will find this kind of stories. Many of the companies on the India Today cover, we have invested. And we have seen how this small type entrepreneurs, small town entrepreneurs have become global in ambition. Today, business is shifting from India to Bharat. Entrepreneurs is shifting from India to Bharat. And what we saw in Indian cricket team, we are likely to see in Indian economy. There was a time when we were importing locomotives, and today we are making Vande Bharat train. It's as good a train as you can get in any parts of the world. Earlier in Hindi film, there used to be songs, Mehngai maar gayi, inflation killed us. And, these were the movies you saw. In Roti Kapda Makan, the villain was a food black marketeer. In Kali Charan, the climax was in Godown where villain was keeping black marketed food. Show me the last movie where villain was a food black marketeer. You won't remember it. Because bani nahi. How come this happened? Mehngai maar gayi moved from front pages to the back pages and disappeared. It happened because our inflation has actually come down. In last 18 months, for 16 months, American inflation was higher than India. My wife, like a normal housewife, sometimes complained that Nilesh महंगाई बहुत बढ़ गई है. I've always given solace in last 18 months by saying that देख पारुल हमारे जो cousin brothers है न्यूयॉर्क में, न्यू जर्सी में, उनकी महंगाई अपने से ज्यादा है. तो उनका दुख दर्द देख के अपनी महंगाई कम लगती है. This has happened for the first time in the independent India's history, that for 16 months, our inflation remained lower than American inflation. It didn't happen with miracle. The government worked for it. They built infrastructure, they increased productivity, they supported market mechanism, and most importantly, they mandated Reserve Bank of India for inflation targeting. RBI did a wonderful work. They controlled liquidity, they ensured smoother transmission, and they priced liquidity at a reasonable level, which balanced inflation and growth. Today, world will pay any price for learning this technique. In 1991, we had to pledge gold to raise foreign exchange loans because our reserves had fallen to less than 14 days import cover. Today, we are sitting on fifth highest FX reserves in the world. We are one of the few countries in the world whose net foreign exchange debt, excluding liabilities to non-resident Indians, is lower than its foreign exchange reserves. Technically, tomorrow, if all the debtors of all the creditors of India, all the lenders of India come to withdraw their money, we'll be able to pay them off and still left with some surplus. Now, please look at country number 3. I believe there are many Indians whose FX holding is also lying in that country. Someday we'll become third and they'll become fifth. Very recently, a German minister was seen talking on television that yes, Russia-Ukraine situation has increased hurdles for citizens, and we want to send money to you. But unfortunately, we can only remit 100,000 transactions a day. In India, we remit every quarter 11 crore transactions in a day under Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Yojana. Imagine a developed world saying that we can do only 100,000 transactions a day, and we are nicely committing 11 crore transactions a day. There was one colonial era magazine's reporter in India. For 3 years, he stayed in India, couldn't find anything worthwhile. Jab bhi likha, negative likha. Then, because he wrote so much negative about India, he was promoted and he went to France. The first tweet he made out of France was, when I want to shift money in France from one bank account to another, it takes 3 days. The damn thing took 1 minute in India. जो 3 साल इंडिया में रह के कुछ देख नहीं पाया अच्छा, उसको जैसे बाहर भेजा सब अच्छा देखने लगा. There was a time when Reserve Bank of India had to mandate many of our banks, please don't do any lending because you are only creating NPS. You are only lending money to Nirav Modi, Mehul Choksi, and Vijay Mallya kind of entrepreneurs. Today, we are at a time where net NPS provided for is one of the lowest in our history. Every borrower of the bank has become like Yudhishthir, prompt in repayment of its debt obligations. This is the transition of India's financial system. There was a time when we were in news for lack of infrastructure. Every investor's complaint was that your infrastructure is not appropriate. Now look at what's happening in India. The infrastructure which we built from 1947 till 2013 is almost getting built between 2014 to 2024. We had about 610 million tons of coal production in 13. As we speak, we are at 892, and it will exceed 1 billion ton by 24. We still are importing coal, but we have improved production by almost 400 million tons in last 10 years. Power capacity was 223 gigawatt. Today it is 412. I'm sure it will exceed 435 in FY24. Power generation is up 60% from 970 million units to about 1.6 billion units. Today, power deficiency, power cuts are down from 8.7% to 0.4%. Electrification of railway from 21,000 kilometers to 58,000 kilometers. Today in US, Amtrak runs on diesel and our trains run on electric. And they lecture us on carbon and global warming and so on and so forth. In highways, we were at 82,000 kilometers. Today we are at 1,45,000, and it is expected to touch to 1,65,000 next year. In airport, from 70, we are at 141, and it should go to 200. In metro, in 2014, we had about 5 cities where metro was running with about 248 kilometers. As we speak, it is 27 cities with 846 kilometers. And next year, it should touch 1,837. In a year or two, India will have more metro railway lines than the America. will be just behind China in metro. In port, our capacity has jumped from 1.4 billion metric tons to about 2.8 billion metric tons. Whether it's port, airport, railway, road, power, we are recreating 67 years work in just about a decade. This is what is going to help our growth in the days to come. Our manufacturing is subscale. A lot of our factories employ less than 20 workers. More importantly, the share of contract workers or kind of underpaying jobs has increased in our labor force. But today, we have opportunity through China Plus One. In the 80s, we and China were standing on the same platform. They became manufacturer to the world, and we were left behind. Today, they are 6 times bigger than us. But now, China Plus One is forcing companies to move their base out of China. And about 14% of that is coming to India. We need to now grab this opportunity which we missed in the 80s with both the hands and make, instead of this 14, probably 41. In some sense, India is going back to where it belongs. For almost 1800 years before English came and colonized us, we were about 25% of global GDP, with either first or second economy in the world. That's why Christopher Columbus went out in search of India, landed up in West Indies, but that's a different matter. That's why Vasco da Gama decided to come to India. अपने रामजी भाई सामजी भाई तो इंग्लैंड या पोर्चुगल जाने निकले नहीं थे. We lost that mojo during colonization. During the English rule, we practically didn't grow for almost 200 years. Our GDP growth rate in 200 years of colonization was zero. For 200 years, we didn't grow. The loot done by Britishers is about $45 trillion. It's about 15 times more than what their current GDP is. Hopefully now we are getting back our mojo and will go where we have stayed for last 1800 years, except last 200 years. Does that mean that our story is all good, good, good? There are no challenges? No, undoubtedly. There are challenges which we have to overcome. The first challenge is our trade deficit. We have been importing far more than what we can normally afford. गांधी जी कह के गए थे बी इंडियन बाय इंडियन. जब वो चले गए तो हमने ये भूल गए. There are 6 items where we need to focus upon. The first one is electronics. There was a fear that electronic imports of India will exceed its oil imports a few years back. That would have been disaster. Thanks to PLI scheme on electronics, now we have started getting mojo back on electronics. This year, Apple's production in India is about $7 billion. On electronics, thanks to PLI scheme, we are changing the gear. On travel, 1.5 crore Indians travel abroad, but only about 50 to 60 lakh visitors come to India. How do we reverse this equation where more foreigners come to visit India and less Indians probably travel abroad? The Museum of Louvre in France, in its good days, used to get more visitors than the whole country of India. On education, about 1.2 million Indians study abroad. They are long-term investments, undoubtedly. But the strain which it carries on our foreign exchange reserves year after year is much higher. How do we bring Harvard and Oxford and Yale to India rather than sending kids abroad? On coal, we have increased production from 600 million tons to 1 billion tons. We have one of the highest reserves of coal in the world. And yet we are spending $25 to $30 billion for import of coal. How do we dig what is there in the ground so that this 25, 30 billion can be stopped? Gold, we remain one of the largest importer of gold in the world. And finally, our trade deficit with China is running at about $90 billion. Our imports from China is in excess of $100 billion. We need to ensure that our spending on travel, education, coal, gold, China, and electronics is well within our mean rather than beyond our means. Is there a silver lining among the dark clouds? Undoubtedly, yes. In two segments of industry or business, we have moved from being importer to exporter. One is the mobile phones, where last year we were at 3.3 billion export. This year number is in excess of $7 to $8 billion. Toys, we have moved from importer to exporter. What we have done in mobile phone and toys, if we can replicate in rest of the industry, hopefully our trade deficit will remain under control. And somewhere up there is a God which is Indian. In the month of Jan 23 and Feb 23, suddenly trade deficit has come down dramatically. Our services exports have taken off by about $4 to $5 billion, and our gold imports have declined. So if Jan 23, Feb 23 trade deficit is sustained, then we are living within our means. But still, I believe what we did with mobile and toy, we should be doing with other sectors. There is a plan for manufacturing competitiveness. What we missed out in the 80s, we need to capture now. And there are four angles to it. The first is fermentation. Today, India provides 45% of medicine consumed by Americans by volume. If our factories shut down, American health will go down. 1/3 of doctors in America are made in India, and 45% of medicines consumed by Americans by volume is made in India. But to make those medicines for ourselves and the world, we import APIs and bulk drugs from China. We don't have a single operational functioning fermentation plant. Does it require some great technology? Answer is no. In the past, Hindustan Antibiotics had a fermentation plant in Chinchwad. Alembic also had a plant, if I remember correctly, in Baroda. And Torrent Gujarat Biotech also had a fermentation plant somewhere in Gujarat. All these three plants shut down because they were not of having economies of scale. Can, as a country, we go and invest in fermentation plants so that I can create a vertical integration from APIs and bulk drugs all the way to formulations? I can truly become generic pharmacy to the world. The world will need Indian doctors, Indian nurses, and Indian medicines, not only for ourselves, but for the world. We have to do this. The second thing which we need is fabrication. Today, thanks to global captive centers, I think 1 in every 4th chip is designed in and around Bangalore. We are large consumer of semiconductor chips in electronics, but we don't know how to fabricate the chip. There's only one company in the world which gives machinery for making fabrication chips, that's based in Netherlands. It's a complicated technology. But imagine if we can start making fabrication chips in India. We have the designing capability, we have the demand for chips. All we need is to manufacture it. Between fermentation and fabrication, we can lay the foundation for pharmacy and electronic industry. The other two factors are related to cost. Logistics makes India uncompetitive to rest of the world. World over, cargo preferably moves on water, then road, then railway, and then road. In India, we have the reverse way. We move more cargo on road, then railway, and then water. Now, can we change our logistics cost? One way to do it is through building of highways, which is already happening. The other way is to develop waterways, which is under process. But one big change which we need to do is in railway. Today, passenger fares haven't been revised for last many decades. The passenger fare subsidy is loaded on commercial freight, and that freight becomes very, very expensive. If this passenger fare subsidy is removed from commercial freight, movement of cargo by railway becomes competitive and it will reduce logistics cost for India. The other thing which we have done is like fasting. Earlier, we used to spend half an hour or 1 hour crossing those toll nakas. Today, it's probably 2 minutes or 5 minutes. All of you remember Octroi Naka of Mumbai, outside of Mankur. It was impossible to cross that. So now we have removed so many things, so many bottlenecks. But the biggest challenge for us remains, how do we separate passenger fare subsidy from the commercial freight? That will make Indian manufacturing competitive. The other thing which is holding back Indian entrepreneurs is power. If we produce 100 units of power, we only bill for 60. World over, this is called transmission and distribution loss. In India, it is theft and dacoity loss. Langar dalo or power cost bachao. Agriculture power is subsidized. That's loaded on industrial power. Today, as a citizen of Mumbai, I pay higher electricity cost per unit than an average Japanese citizen. Their per capita income is much, much higher than ours. This is because we don't bill for agriculture power. The passenger fare subsidy and agriculture power subsidy, instead of absorbed by the government, is absorbed by the industry, and that's making us uncompetitive. If we can put these four building blocks, fermentation, fabrication, logistics, and power cost competitive to the rest of the world, our growth is certain. The other challenge for us is consumption. When COVID came and hit us, the upper middle class and the rich class consumption wasn't impacted, but the lower middle class and bottom end consumption was impacted. People are today consuming some of the items lower than what it was consumed earlier. Our SUV sales at 20 lakhs are at all-time high, but the two-wheeler sales are down about 50 lakhs from the top, from 2.5 crore to 2 crore, or about 30 lakhs down from the pre-COVID level. There's waiting period of 1 year for SUV, and there are not enough takers for entry-level bike. How do we manage this consumption broad basing? In rural India, last 5 quarters FMCG volume growth is negative. In urban India, 3 out of 5 is negative, or 2 out of 5 is negative. How do we support consumption at the bottom of the pyramid? How do we ensure that the lower middle class and poor also participate in India's growth story? Oil continues to remain our Rahu column. The severity of Rahu has come down as we expanded our economy. But the long-term solution to Rahu Kal is our investment in solar energy and green hydrogen. To the left of us, most of the countries have enough oil. To the right of us, most of the countries have enough oil. Even a country like Myanmar, which doesn't need oil and gas, have plenty of oil and gas. So we can legitimately complain to God, ki Bhagwan aap hame bhul gaye. But God will answer that, look, I have given Indians the most cleanest fuel. That's ample solar energy. How do we leverage this solar energy to create necessary energy independence? Today, green hydrogen and solar energy both are step in the right direction. In this budget, government has provided 20,000 crore for commercialization of green hydrogen technology. If this works out, India's Rahu Kalam can end permanently. One big challenge for India is our savings misallocation. In the first 21 years of this century, we have spent $373 billion for import of gold. This is net import after excluding exports for jewelry. Now, we all know when we come back from foreign travel in airport, there are many flights coming from Middle East. Many travelers, when they go to Middle East, their net weight is 50 kg, but when they come back, they are 55 kg. They are loaded with gold jewelry. Maybe $7 to $10 billion worth of jewelry is just passing through Green Channel. There is also gold smuggling because gold import duty on India is about 15%. Collectively, could India have spent about $500 billion in import of gold in just 21 years of this century? Answer is possible. That's your net official imports plus gold smuggling plus jewelry coming with travelers under Green Channel. That's more than our net foreign direct investment received of $357 billion. We are a country which needs investment, but we are actually remitting capital abroad. This is like a patient who has been admitted to hospital, and instead of blood transfusion, it is giving blood donation and then hoping that hamari health achhi ho jayegi. This misallocation of savings is the biggest challenge for India. Now, every dark cloud has a silver lining. Indians probably are sitting anywhere between $2 to $3 trillion worth of gold. As gold prices go up, the biggest wealth effect will be in India. One irony of India is that the purchasing power is concentrated in the hands of few. Just 5% of users account for 1/3 of Zomato's order. Just 1% of travelers account for 45% of all flights. Just 6.5% people account for 44% of digital transactions. Just 1% of Indians take home 22% of our income. Undoubtedly, there is a need to expand this space. Remember, we are Sub-Saharan Africa plus Sri Lanka plus France put together. Again, the good part is that growth is getting diversified. As we speak, 90% of Indian districts are witnessing double-digit credit growth from the banking system. People are borrowing money to invest into their businesses. This is the highest ever growth in terms of credit growth across the country in recent times. The other thing is accuracy of data. If you look at our 3-year CAGR on GDP between FY23 and FY20, the number is marginally positive. But when you look at some items like diesel, cement, electricity, petrol, steel, four-wheeler, railway freight, IT services, e-way bills, they have grown at multiple times our GDP growth. Which of the number is right? Is the GDP number right, or is the number on the right-hand side right? Somewhere we need to invest in capturing data in a more meaningful manner. With those challenges, what is our long-term story? There was a statement by John Chambers, CEO of Cisco. If I have to bet on one country in Asia, it is India. If it is two, I will bet India twice. There's a saying in Japanese which says that if you do not enter the tiger's cave, you will not catch its cub. This is the picture from Maruti Suzuki factory. Once in a while, leopard enters their factory. They shut that part, call the wildlife department, jungle authorities, tranquilize the leopard, send it back, and start making cars again. This kind of excitement is not available in Mercedes-Benz factory or Honda Toyota factory. It's exclusively in India. But because you know how to manage leopard once in a while, that's why you get this kind of return. This is Maruti's performance against global auto stocks. Maruti has delivered more return in US dollar terms since its listing in 2003 than Honda, Toyota, Suzuki, and Nissan put together. It has delivered more return than GM and Ford put together. It has delivered more return than Volkswagen and Mercedes put together. It has delivered more return than Hyundai. Except Tesla, virtually every single automobile company, Maruti is left behind. This is the potential of India. When you invest here, you get returns which are disproportionate to other parts of the world. But do remember, once in a while leopard आएगा तो उसको tranquilize करना पड़ेगा. What will be the risk for India? The biggest risk for India is risk of self-goal. All of you are familiar with Singur, India's most respected business house. Tata's went Singur to set up their automobile plant. Singur was a farmland, low growth, poverty, lack of development, all visible. For more than 5 years, they struggled to set up their automobile plant, but they didn't succeed. Finally, वहां से निकल पड़े. Even today, if you go to Singur, there's no growth, there's poverty, there's lack of development. And more importantly, people who fought for Tatas to go out of Singur are now praying that Tata should come back. Against Singur, there is Sanand model. When Tatas were moving out of Singur, they were invited to come to Sanand. Gossip says that the then Chief Minister of Gujarat, Mr. Narendra Modi, sent SMS Suswagatam to Mr. Ratan Tata, and that's how he landed up in Sanand. Be the case as it may be, Tatas came to Sanand. In 18 months, they started rolling out naan. Many years later, when Tesla started rolling out of China in 12 months, that became global headline. But before that, about a decade earlier, we started Tata's nano factory in just about 18 months. Approvals were given, land was given, power connection was given, infrastructure was built, and nano started rolling out from there. Sanand today is not Singapore, but you can see development, you can see growth, you could see prosperity. If our future is more likely to be Singur, then there's no hope for us. And if our future is Sanand, then there's nothing which can stop us. I hope and pray we have more Sanands in our life than Singur, and that means India will continue on its way to become third largest economy. Thank you.